Good evening, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks for joining us. While 2013 has been a relatively quiet year in local politics, the next 3 years will be quite active, beginning with city elections in February and then selecting a new governor, plus congressional elections. Campaigns are fueled by contributions. And this week, 2 media outlets teamed up to look at who the state's big money people are and the consequences of their largesse. We'll examine the politics beyond the money. We'll also be discussing presidents and the Port of New Orleans, the Saints at the halfway point of the season, the Pelicans starting fresh, and our Future Watch segment examines the condition of St. Charles Avenue. On the track for us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer, Informed Sources, Larry Holder, Saints beat writer for NOLA.com, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Manuel Torres, staff writer with the Times-Picayune. First, I'm going to go to Errol because we had a presidential visit, and the backdrop was the Port of New Orleans. I
think it was a good opportunity for the president because it gave him a chance to talk about other things other than healthcare and foreign policy, because he could talk about building and vision and structure, and so it was a very positive, upbeat talk. It only lasted about 20 minutes, and it was he could really relate to the people. It was a very informal, delivered presentation, and it was very interesting what his style was. But, you know, one interest that the Port of New Orleans has is in being able to develop it into more of a deep water port, because one thing that's happened in the shipping industry around the world, in addition to more containerization, is that with the widening of the Panama Canal, you're going to be having some really big ships in a few years. And so the ports need to be able to keep up with that. They need to be able to accommodate those big ships. And like the president said, if a port can't do it, they're going to lose that business. And so I know that's one thing that the city of New Orleans has in mind. I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but at the same time the president was speaking, this press release came out from the Port of Los Angeles talking about a new incentive program that they have, that for people to use their port, which they say is the largest port in the nation, that they have with a whole series of complicated financial incentives for using the Port of Los Angeles. So you see this real tug of war going on among the ports, and so I don't know if they had an eye to Obama speaking at the Port of New Orleans. But one other thought I wanted to mention is that the Port of New Orleans has always been something of high interest to presidents, no more so than Thomas Jefferson. You know, he wrote that famous letter to Livingston, who was the ambassador to France, saying there's no place on the continent that the holder of which is our natural enemy in the Port of New Orleans. He understood that if this fledgling United States did not control the Port of New Orleans, it could never grow and be what it was. He told Livingston that the Port of New Orleans, that 3/8 of the nation's cargo goes through that port, and so it was important for him to contain it. Abraham Lincoln, as a young man, when he was 18, according to a book by Richard Campanella, actually came down a flatboat, on the crew of a flatboat. And there was this incident that they camped out above New Orleans, and these thugs came at night and beat him up. And so Lincoln almost had his first brush with death, actually along the river above New Orleans. But as president during the Civil War, he certainly understood the strategic importance of the Port of New Orleans. And one of the first things they did was they sent Farragut and his gunboats to be sure that we controlled the Port of New Orleans. But the most famous visit, at least in contemporary times, was John Kennedy's visit. When he came and he went to City Hall and he talked about the space industry. Then he had this procession down St. Charles Avenue. But his main mission was to dedicate the then new Nashville Wharf. And it was that same spirit, because more and more the shift was to containerization and talking about that. And so presidents have realized, I mean, the fact that the global importance of New Orleans as a port, and so it's a good platform to talk about vision and great ideas. And we had our president there today, taking center stage at our port and talking about the need for more exports to strengthen our economy. In Port of New Orleans, right there, the star. Now we're going to go over to Manuel, and
You and Lee Zurich over at Fox 8 News partnered in a comprehensive series that's just the beginning. We only saw the beginning of it. And it's about our campaign finance system here in Louisiana. Could you just sort of start to describe to us what you're finding out?
Well, first of all, we wanted to take a comprehensive look. When we started this process in early July, this is the first effort for the partnership between NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, and WVUE Fox 8 News. And we wanted to do something that was significant. We knew we wanted to provide public service, and we wanted to do hard news, good stuff. So we figure there's always questions about campaign contribution. Who is given to who? What are they getting in return, or if anything, and so on. And we wanted to take what we believe is, to date, the most comprehensive look at who finances campaigns in the state of Louisiana.
And what did you come up with? Describe to us
what we found so far we have about a third of the series happened in this first week. And we found that we look at $204 million that went into campaigns between 2009 and 2012. And this is just for state campaigns, local offices, all the way to state, no federal offices here. No, so those have been examined ad nauseum. And what we found is there is a very small number of special interest organizations and donors that pulled together amounted to about $63 million. So the top 400 contributors in the state of Louisiana gave $63 million, or a third of all the money. And so we have a list on our websites where you can go and explore who they are. We downloaded about 750,000 records from the Secretary of, from the Ethics Administration. Then we compare those, the contributions or the contributors, with owners of companies from the incorporation records. We look at lawsuits, we look at mortgages, we look at social media too, so we could who their families were. And so if you go and click on each of those, you see the companies they own, their relatives who donated. That's how we come up with our tally.
And so what you're finding, from what I'm reading in your reports and listening to Lee also in his, this is our campaign finance system, that by and large, these donations are within the letter of the law.
Absolutely.
But what's the question then about them?
The question that we wanted to ask then is, if a very small group of very wealthy or very powerful interests can have this much influence, is that the good thing? Is that a good thing for the democracy of our state? And what influence are they having in public policy and in public spending? And what some people, we interview about 50 people. This is an effort. I mean, Lee and I are kind of the lead reporters in it, but there were 20 different reporters, between data analysts, designers, graphic analysts, reporters, photographers, etc., who contributed to this series. And what we're finding from the interviews we did with many people is that they're saying the way the system is right now, it does not work. Governor Romer, former Governor Romer, for example, he was one of the former politicians who now, since then, the campaign limits began with him in Louisiana. And he says the way the system is right now, you got to make some changes, because a very small group of special interests, mostly businesses, are having extreme influence on the system. Now, that not always is for bad. So some of the reforms that we have had in recent decades were supported by business interests. BGR, PAR, the Council for a Better Louisiana, those organizations were all created by conscientious business leaders who decided we need some more open government. So it's not entirely bad. What we're raising questions about is this a system that works for most people in the state? And
of course, former Governor Romer, he ran for president, and really that was his issue, is reforming just how campaigns are run, how they are financed. Explain to us bundling.
Well, bundling, there are two types of bundling, if you will. The one that we see more commonly is when different people get together and agree to donate individually, independently, on their own. But I mean, we all may agree to support one candidate, but you write your check, you write yours, I just collect them and deliver them. But each of you wrote the check of your own volition. Then there is illegal bundling, which is what Dickie Blossman did. We had a story about that in our series this week. He paid bonuses to all the members of his bank board, and then they wrote checks. So the campaign received 12 different checks, or 11 different checks in this case.
That's really just funneled money.
Absolutely, it's laundering money, is what it was. They were laundering. The Ethics Board right now has a case against 7 companies that the Ethics Board claim are connected, and they're just simply pass-throughs for River Birch Landfill, owned by Fred Hebe and Jim Ward. So, that's the thing. The problem with the law is that there is really no way, campaigns have no incentive to police that, because they can keep the money. They're not required to return it. So there's no incentive. A candidate can receive tens of thousands of dollars on the same day from what is clearly the same interest, and have no issues about it. They actually welcome it.
So in your reporting, what you all are finding too in relation to board appointments and also the biggest industry donor in the state, if you could quickly touch on those two issues.
The board appointments, we started noticing as we were looking, we follow the money. We truly did. We didn't go in thinking, okay, let's look at this industry. We just say who is giving and try to figure out why. And we found a large number of board appointees, about 317 appointees serving right now in the state commissions and boards who donated to Governor Jindal's campaign. Huge amounts of money. And then we also, and the conception many people have is that the oil and gas industry or banking remain some of the biggest donors. Lawyers do. But we discovered that the nursing homes gave a huge amount on just the 4 years, more than $2 million on just the 4 years that we were looking at. And during that time, they were benefiting from policies that are maintaining their rates about stable, while everybody else in the healthcare sector is going down during the business crisis.
You identified 400 people?
400 interests. Some of them are individuals, some of them are individuals in their companies.
Is that what you call a very small group of people? That seems to me to be a fairly large group of people. I'd be more concerned if it was 40 people, more than 400 people.
Well, we put it in perspective. There are 130,000 donors. 400 of them represent 0.03% of the donors. So if you took 100 people, not even one person will be, less than one person in that population. So we thought that was a very small group, a very exclusive group.
To have a whole lot of power.
For when you're looking at 130,000 people. Another way to put it is the number of donors in a campaign can fill the Superdome 1.5 times. The number of people who donated 63 million, or a third of that, can fit in 4 of the suites at the Dome.
Well, as you said, this is just the beginning of a series that's going to be month-long, and in collaboration with Lee Zurich and the team over at Fox 8 News. And this is something, we've been seeing a changing landscape of news gathering and news delivery in our community, and this is sort of part of it. I come from a from very long ago of news reporting. At that time, media did not share. We were extremely competitive. So what kind of changes are you seeing here, Errol, and how we're gathering and delivering news?
Well, we see 2 examples right here with 2 guys that actually threw out their full titles. They're NOLA.com/Times-Picayune, and so people have more credentials. But I think the big change and the most striking one is the merger with television, which there was a time when newspapers wanted nothing to do with television. In the early days, when television first started, there was one newspaper editor who didn't even want to put television listing. He didn't want the people to know that there was television out there. Okay, he didn't want them to find out, and they did find out, by the way. And so, but to see this merger and what you're seeing here between the and to me they're very powerful, and that's probably for the public good. But between the Picayune and Channel 8, and then with the New Orleans Advocate and Channel 4, it gives people 2 ways to discover the news. And if they read about the story in the newspaper and they're interested in it, and they see it on television or vice versa, and each medium has a different way that they can present the stories. Newspapers, which is why I think we need newspapers, by the way, is that they can do it more graphically. They can spread out things, and they can really show things, as you all have done so effectively. And so television can't do that as well, but it can get the message across quickly and in a hurry. And so the combination of the 2 is really good.
And how are you finding the combination?
It's been great work. We knew, Lee Zurich is one of the most respected journalists on television in our region. And we have a very strong team of journalists at NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune. So we knew that our newsrooms could merge and work together. And our partnership with WVUE is not just on this series. We do daily reporting. They have our sport writers going, offer their expertise there.
Right. I've been on Fox 8's pregame show for Saints for the past 2 years. And so this is not something that's all of a sudden collaborated. So,
it started with sports.
Right.
Actually, that was the first thing.
But for hard news, it's new.
Sure. Yeah, but to them it's a great resource, and even to us too. We get video that we didn't have. They get news and content and expertise from all our staff. More than 60 different staffers at NOLA.com that can come and contribute to them. And I think the real power of this partnership is seen with not only the daily coverage, this special. God forbid we don't have a storm for many, many years, but the next time we have such an emergency in this town, you're really going to see the full power of this partnership.
So pushing more information out there to the community.
I think so.
Right now we're going to talk about a push over to the Saints. Middle of their season, very important stuff. Middle of their season, how's the rest of it looking? It does look a little scary to me.
Well, you're not alone, and even though the Saints are 6-2, a lot of people within town, you go to one, I've done 3 chats this week on NOLA.com. And there's plenty of panic from fans for a team that's only 6-2. I know people are concerned about the offensive line. Drew Brees is getting hit too many times and not running the football enough. I still think if you ask many Saints fans, would they be disappointed if they were 6-2 at the midpoint? I'd say no. Now, this next stretch, this final 8 games, is certainly tough. Starting on Sunday against the Cowboys, they're a division leader. Then you go against San Francisco. Everybody knows the recent history with San Francisco. Right. They're 6-2, and right now they're still a wild card team because the Saints in 2 weeks after that will go to Seattle. At Seattle on a Monday night game, they're the #1 seed. You also play Carolina twice. And all of a sudden, the Saints have lost 2 and 3, and Carolina's won 4 in a row. So now, it's funny, I brought this up to Malcolm Jenkins a couple of days ago in the locker room. I was rattling off the schedule, and I told him, well, Carolina's only a game back from you guys. And he stopped. He said, wait, what? It's almost like they've been they're so tunnel vision, but they didn't realize, I mean, he didn't even realize that that's how tight it's gotten. So it's a very crucial stretch, especially starting Sunday night against Dallas, a rival that's all of a sudden it's become a rivalry because there's Sean Payton ties, former coach, Rob Ryan ties. They've just fired him, and now he wants revenge. And I know a lot of people always remember the Cowboys are the team that ended the 13-game winning streak in 2009 in the Superdome. And that's the last time, ironically, that the Saints lost a primetime game, was that game. So a lot of intertwining pieces.
A bunch of the guys that were out last Sunday are in this Sunday, though, right?
There are 10.
Drew Brees will have some targets he did not have.
There are 10 players listed as questionable. You can only sit 7, so some of those guys are going to play. But
some of them are real.
But I mean, you're going to have vital. I mean, there are going to be some pieces that are out. Even on the defensive side, Cam Jordan may miss a game. He's been dealing with an ankle injury. Malcolm Jenkins, who's really been, to me, one of the biggest, brightest spots after last year, who struggled. He's been playing well. I think you saw a difference without him last week in New York, that the defense struggled a little bit. So, look, they're banged up, but I think the biggest thing that people are worried about is can this offensive line protect Drew Brees? Drew Brees is one of the most valuable assets in all of football, and he's getting hit way too many times. Even 2 weeks ago, Drew Brees threw 5 touchdowns, but he was also sacked 4 times. Now, I think they can shore this up this week. I don't think Dallas's defensive line is as potent as the Jets. The Jets have a very good young defensive line. Same thing with the Buffalo Bills. And so I don't think there's so much to panic about, but if you keep seeing number 9 on his back, leaning over or grabbing some sort of body part, people panic. And I totally get that. And Sean Payton absolutely understands that.
What would you say are the chances? I mean, everybody worries that, okay, if we do make the postseason, and we don't have home field advantage, and we're all playing the cold, we don't have a great record to that. And
no, and you even saw that it wasn't frigid in New York, and it was still a challenge.
What are our chances of landing a home field spot?
They've never won a playoff game on the road in franchise history, so that's going against them. And say if Seattle's the #1 seed, that is a very treacherous place to play. We saw a couple of years ago, the Saints were the reigning Super Bowl champions. They went up against a 7-9 Seattle team and lost there. Now, Seattle right now is the #1 seed. We'll see how they react when they go up there in a couple weeks. They will play there on a Monday night in December.
And it will be cold.
It will be cold. It will be loud. That place is louder than anywhere else in the NFL. So it will certainly be a test. Do I think they can win on the road in a playoff game? I do. It's still, though, people will have their doubts because, I mean, look at the history. They've never done it.
Who will you guess will be the #2 on the NFC when we're done?
You would think maybe the Saints get to #1, but look, it's right now Saints are 6-2. They have you're still the division leaders right now are Detroit and Dallas. So if you beat Dallas, that helps you in there. But they've got to worry about Carolina. I mean, Carolina's on their back. They might catch them, and if the Saints are caught, they might be a wild card team. So it's not as tidy as once you thought when they were 5-0, and they're never going to lose. It's a little hairier than it was.
This Sunday, what's your call at home in the Dome against the Cowboys?
31-21 Saints.
All right. I agree
was
with
making
that.
you nervous on purpose.
10-point spread.
I agree with that one. I want to see that. Dawn, St. Charles Avenue, our lovely St. Charles Avenue, those streetcar tracks are ripped up and being repaired. So it doesn't look as lovely right now.
It doesn't look as lovely. And, you know, we've talked on this program a lot about streets all around us and how they don't look so lovely. So I think when you get onto St. Charles and there's more orange fencing and there's more construction trucks. Like, oh my gosh, here we go again. There's nowhere that you can drive where you can make a U-turn where you once thought you could make a U-turn, or you can actually get through. And the streetcar tracks literally have been under construction for a very long time. There was an extensive repair after Hurricane Katrina. They were closed for 3 years, the St. Charles Avenue tracks, after Katrina, got back up and running, and then lo and behold, the tie system that holds the tracks in place, that was last replaced in 1988, they found that there were ties that were failing and faulty and weathered and termite damaged, and the ties along the system needed to be replaced whole scale. The project started in March of 2011, was supposed to run 12 to 18 months. It's still well underway. If you drive St. Charles Avenue, you know, especially between the area of Jefferson and Napoleon right now, that's where it's really torn up. The project has had to start and stop several different times for several different reasons. The first stop came just 2 months after it started in 2011. The contractor walked off the job. Then there were negotiations between the RTA and the city and the contractor, and they got the contractor back on the job, and they started up again in earnest in August of that year. Then they had to stop at length during the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras, stopping again this year for Mardi Gras. So it's just been an on-again, off-again job. They've also, along the way, discovered 2 portions that they didn't realize they needed to fix, but the damage was worse than they thought, so they've had to add 2 projects to it. So all along the way, it's really just start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. It is supposed to be finally complete, estimated timeline, April of 2014, so next April. So the whole project will be 37 months instead of 12 to 18 months. Still same price tag because it was a contract agreed to price. And the ties, when they were repaired back in 1988, were replaced with a hardy tropical wood that was the industry standard at the time, that termite damage. Now it's a plastic, recycled composite plastic that is the industry standard now. If industry standard does what it did this time, it might only have a 25-year life. They really don't know how long it will last. It is industry standard.
Well, in '88, did they anticipate that it would have a 25-year life?
In
or
88,
beyond?
25 years or beyond. So here we go again.
Here we go again.
But then Katrina, we didn't know that. Was that a factor? Did that affect those ties?
The ties were affected by weather and termites both.
Okay.
So, you know, that part of St. Charles Avenue did not flood during Katrina. There was not flood damage there. We're talking from, well, actually, the Claiborne and Carrollton area did, but
Right, the water, it was on the north side of that, but didn't get to
but
there, right?
all along the tracks from where they start at Claiborne and South Carrollton, all the way to Lee Circle has had the ties replaced, and in the areas where they're working, they supplement with bus coverage. Through all of this, ridership has increased on that route. Ridership is more than 3 million riders a year, and it's continuing to climb. So despite the fact that you have to get off at one place, get on a bus, get back on in another place, people continue to ride it. It's, you know, it's the only streetcar track in America that's been operational since the 1800s. And the first full-scale fix of that whole track system was back in 1988. So people who built it in the 1800s really knew what they were doing.
So we look for the completed tracks, the rebuilding of the tracks,
April 2014. And more shutdowns as we go, and the project will be on hiatus during Mardi Gras, but otherwise it's up and running, and there are areas where you can't drive and turn, and you know the people who run along St. Charles Avenue can't wait to get their running route back.
Well, thanks for the update. And now we're going to talk about the Pelicans. And we have the Saints midway. The Pelicans really are just starting their season. How is that looking for us?
I think it's up and down. People say Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and it seems like the only teams they can beat are ones they can actually, a Pelican that can actually eat, and like an adamant object. But it's you know, they're 2-3. They're going to play the Lakers tonight. Lakers aren't at full strength, but I think it's, you have all these young pieces, and you look at them on paper and say, wow, this team could be a playoff team. They're young, and they have something that they could build for the future. Anthony Davis, Eric Gordon, Drew Holiday. They brought in Tyreek Evans, Ryan Anderson, and yet they're still trying to figure things out. I think a lot of times you see breakdowns in the third quarter so far, and then even a couple nights ago or last night, when they have a big lead and it shrinks and you say, oh, here they go again. At least they pull out the win. But yet I still think they're trying to figure things out, mesh the pieces together. You know you have the pieces. And Monty Williams, he's good. He's a good young coach, and yet I think there are high expectations. They feel like they can make the playoffs. We've seen kind of some drama with Errol Gordon the last couple of years. Does he want out? Does he want to trade? Is he hurt? Now he needs to live up to his expectations. Anthony Davis, he needs to play and start really being kind of a frontline guy. I don't know if they're there yet. It's still way earlier in the season, but the expectations are higher, rightfully so. And will they get there? I don't know. Again, it's still very early in the season, but it's been erratic.
Making the playoffs is fairly generous. You just have to finish in the top 8 in your division. So are they like an 8th place ball club?
I think that's where you're looking. And it's fairly generous, and yet they haven't been there. I mean, it's that's something you're still striving to get to. I mean, Monty Williams has only made the playoffs once and Dell Demps as well. So I think there is pressure on them. Let's make this work. We made big trades, got an all-star point guard with Drew Holiday, and you've got pieces to make this a winning team. Now, if they don't do it, I think there should be some pressure, but they're still learning on the job right now.
How many games in the season, in the regular season?
82.
And we've had how many so far?
Tonight will be game number 6, so
Number
no
6,
need to panic. We're not even halfway there like the
And we're gonna-
Saints, even though people are panicking about that. So.
Okay, we're going to remain confident about that one too. Okay, we're going to take a look at what's coming up in the near future. Errol, go to you
Well,
first.
when people think about the lower ninth ward, there's a lot of different images that come up. Probably one of them is not wetlands, but there is significant. There's the Bayou Bienvenue wetlands. On November 14th, they have an observation area, and they're going to dedicate new signage there because they want people to go and see the natural life there, but also there's explanatory material explaining about the erosion that's going on in the area too. And so they really want it to be more of an educational thing. And so don't forget about Bayou Bienvenue in the lower ninth.
All right, Larry.
LSU, Alabama, the immediate future tomorrow. I think that's enough said. I know a lot of people are looking for this matchup, primetime matchup on CBS. It's one of the most watched games every year. Can LSU go to Tuscaloosa and win? I'm not going to say yes.
Come on, I wanted to find out.
I don't think it's going to happen.
We had 2 years ago.
No. Look, Zach Mettenberger's playing really well. Look, he could easily be a first-round draft pick, LSU's quarterback, but I think it's going to be tough sledding. But so my future is immediate tomorrow night, LSU, Alabama.
And I say go Tigers.
My future is denial that we're even to this time of year, but November 26th, Tuesday, in 2.5 weeks is when Canal Street lights up for Christmas.
Are we there?
We are there. I'm in denial, but we're there at the Astor Crown Plaza at 5:30. Downtown Development District lights the city. So we are there.
We're ready for the holidays, aren't we? Manuel.
Well, I'm going to put a plug for the work we're doing. We got more coming up next week and the week after that. And then we also have the anniversary of JFK assassination coming up in a couple of weeks, and I think you're going to see some special stuff coming up from us too.
We'll certainly be looking for that, and keep up the good work on the series.
Thank
It's
you.
really,
Appreciate
really
it. Thanks for the
fascinating and so
readership.
comprehensive. Well, thanks a lot to everybody for joining us, and thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next week for Informed Sources. Good evening.